Once again this week, we start with the news. Funding is a bit slow again this week as we near Q3. We see further acquisitions taking advantage of the market dip, more asset and talent scoops than true business acquisitions, though. Concerns about the new .zip domains. The OWASP top 10 for large language models has been created. LLM AI attack surface mapping, understanding the RSA iceberg. The FBI has cybercriminals paranoid. And Montana bans Tick Tock because somebody cooked chicken in NyQuil and filmed it. Then we've got 5 micro interviews to share that were broadcast live from RSA last month. For our second segment, we've got John Check, Executive Director of Cyber Protection Solutions at Raytheon Intelligence and Space. We'll share the critical steps organizations must take to prepare for a security breach. Then Amitai Ratson, CEO of Pantera, discusses automated validation of security controls. There's some tricky names in here. And finally, Thomas Kinsella, founder and chief customer officer at Tynes, talks leveraging no-code automation to keep up with threats. And for our third and final segment today, we've got 2 micro interviews to share. Deepika Chauhan, Chief Product Officer at DigiCert, discusses the importance of unified platforms and flexible deployment options to put digital trust at work. And then Bill Brenner discusses a variety of topics affecting security professionals today with Steve Reagan. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Do the words free time or relaxation sound foreign to you? Perhaps you've been stuck in the office too long, battling cyber threats or worrying about the next strain of ransomware. Let Sophos help provide peace of mind 24/7, 365 with cybersecurity delivered as a service. Because we want you to get back to your weekends, family dinners, and everything in between. And you'll get there with Sophos. Visit securityweekly.com/Sophos to learn more. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Geek Pride Day. This is episode 319, recorded on Thursday, May 25th, 2023. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem, fractional podcast co-host, Tyler Shields. How you doing, Tyler?
I am doing well. Fractional podcast co-host. I love that. That's pretty true.
All right. Also joining me is the Czar of Zero Trust, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler. How you doing, Katie?
I'm well. Happy May 25th to you.
And finally joining us is the Baron of Bloodhound, the Pirate King of PowerShell, Sean Metcalf. How are you, Sean?
Doing well, thank you. Back from a visit to beautiful Springfield, Missouri over the weekend, so it's nice to be back home for a bit, especially going into a holiday weekend in the U.S. How are you, Adrian?
I'm good. Our B-Sides is done here. So it's a ton of weight off. We just did the wrap-up meeting at a nice local barbecue place called Sweet Peas here in downtown Knoxville. And it was nice. It was almost entirely positive stuff. Yeah, I think one talk got one bad review, and that's pretty much it.
And I just, on a personal note, I want to say congratulations to Ella for her advancement ceremony today, going from elementary school to middle school.
Woohoo! No, nice.
Nice.
Very cool. Congrats, Ella. All right, a quick announcement here, and then we'll get into the news. We didn't mention anything about being Geek Pride Day.
No, I'm proud to be a geek. I don't know about you, Adrian, but I'm totally proud to be a geek.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah. I mean, that's most of what we're doing on this show is geeking out. I know me and Tyler have been geeking out on AI quite a bit, and I'm sure Sean was geeking out at B-Side Springfield. But yeah, no, it's a privilege and a pleasure.
Is there such a thing, Adrian? Is there such a thing as a geek flag?
I don't know. Is it because it's Geek Pride? Does that make you?
That's what I'm thinking. Should we be flying a flag, like a literal flag, like a geek flag?
I'd say if you have a Star Wars flag or a Star Trek flag, or like you're already flying it, right?
You're already there.
If you're letting say, or you got tattoos, related to sci-fi, like there are plenty of people out there already letting people know about their geek pride.
Let that geek flag fly, ladies and gentlemen.
And it's cool that it's kind of mainstream to be able to do that. Like you can be a geek and be cool, whereas you watch some older movies and like the worst thing you could be is a nerd or a geek or something like that. Yeah.
The geek shall inherit the earth.
That's right. Yeah, it was only off by one letter.
It's okay to be intelligent now.
How about that?
Oh. All right, quick announcement here. Our teams from Security Weekly and SE Media were on site at RSA Conference 2023, delivering in-depth reporting, analysis, and interviews from the conference. If you were unable to join us in person or didn't catch the live streams, you can access all of our RSA Conference 2023 coverage at securityweekly.com/RSAC. And there are some really great interviews in there. At least half a dozen of us were doing those interviews too, and it was cool. I got to meet at least one other host in person for the first time. I had no idea Mike from ESW was so tall. All right, now for the news, you can check out securityweekly.com/ESW319 if you want to check out the stories that we're going to be talking about. As usual, we may not get to all of them. We'll see, but yeah, there's some good stuff there. I had some time for some commentary on there, and yeah. So as usual, let's start out with funding. Some pretty light funding. I'm seeing a lot of stories basically saying things are still looking pretty rough out there in terms of the market, and it's interesting. We seeing a lot of international funding and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. So the funding we do see, like it's not all U.S. based, Silicon Valley based, or Tel Aviv based. It's there's more and more Israel as time goes on, more and more startups based out of there. But I also see a lot more Europe, a lot more India, a lot more places like that.
Yeah, when there's not great locations to be putting money to work or capital to work inside the U.S., you got to find new locations, right? The U.S. is down, and some of the other general common markets are down. It makes more sense to put money to work in Europe and other alternate places. So, not surprised, and really cool to see it building infrastructure and ecosystems in other locales.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I was down in when I was working for a Brazilian company, I was floored at the size of the startup scene there. Like Sao Paulo is this huge tech hub. I mean, it's huge in every description of the word. It's like 22 million people or something like that. But tons of tech startups down there. Yeah, so Kubernetes founders launch a startup, StackLock. I thought we might have mentioned this last week, but if not, yeah. So this is I don't know. Some of these companies we have just coming out of stealth here strike me as a bit late to market. Like containers. I feel like container security is fairly, that market is fairly overcrowded. And then also we have a Lakeland. Lakeland, is that the name of the company or where they are? Lakeland based. What is Hook Security is the name of it, but yet another security awareness training company.
I mean, seriously, all these markets. What are you doing different, right? That's the fundamental.
Right.
The thing I always ask myself when I see some of these things, and maybe the Kube one's not a good example, but certainly a training one. And I've never met with that company, so I don't know anything about them. They may be doing something absolutely unique and interesting, but you really got to figure out a way to bubble that to the top of your press release, right?
Yeah.
You can't just say we're doing yet another X, in this case, training, cybersecurity training, without saying how you're any better than anybody else in an overcrowded, saturated old market, right? So that always blows my mind.
The latest thing we've seen in this market for a differentiator is hiring actual, people with psychology backgrounds, stuff like that, that really understand how the human brain works, and how to set the right incentives and things like that. But even that market's crowded. Like we've talked about a ton of those, and we've actually had some of them. We've interviewed some folks on the show as well. So
yeah, and that's been kind of a trend for 5 or so years. This one says, I don't know much about it, and you need a subscription to read the whole announcement. But it says it uses humor and psychology. So I think that was maybe what they were attempting to get at as far as the differentiator. But like you said, it's not apparent. Maybe it works. Cybersecurity awareness training is not the best, right? And it's for a lot of companies, I know even for my company, and we're a cybersecurity company, a lot of people who work at the company still think of it as a compliance activity. It gets sent to us by the people team. We all go, oh God, I have to sit here and do an hour of training and take a quiz. And we're in security, right? So, hopefully they do something different. It isn't really apparent from this, but I think you're right in that even if you're not doing something different, but you do it better, it needs to be more apparent, because otherwise, I just sort of glossed over this when you sent the stories out, because it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think somebody should take a $20 million worth of investment and have the entire training section of videos narrated and comedically delivered by Chris Rock. That would be fantastic.
I would listen to Sam Jackson do cybersecurity awareness training narration.
That's what I was thinking.
Yell at people who don't get the right answer.
That was kind of the idea with I think it was Habituate, where they were actually they kind of set up in LA, right? And they're tapping into the availability of local actors and stuff like that to put together their security awareness training videos. And the idea was to up the level of quality of that content to where it wasn't soul sucking to consume it.
And how did that work out for him?
I have no idea. I have not checked in on Habituate in a while. Do you know?
No, I'm looking right now.
I was wondering what you were typing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Their founder, Chad, kind of made a name for himself for things unrelated to the company, but
he did, yes. And I remember Chad now. Yeah, the last funding round was April 30th, right? 2020, Adrian. So they haven't been funded in over 3 years. So.
Okay. Are they still around?
That's tough.
Tell me.
Anyways, this is one hell of a rat hole just to talk about
security awareness training,
humor in videos. Now that being said,
how is this market doing though? Is what we're asking.
Yeah, when KnowBe4 came out with their video content, it was super popular. A lot of people liked it, and that lasted for me like maybe 3 episodes before I learned to just mute the tab and ignore it when I'm doing my training and watching the video. So, it has to be absolutely amazing and impeccable content for people to bother.
They were acquired by Arctic Wolf.
Habituate was.
Yeah. Yeah, in 2021. Yeah, I don't think they shared the deal price, but yeah, it's a pretty good exit. Arctic Wolf has been, even through the downturn, has been doing pretty well, I think.
This is a hard market. I've heard of a couple of companies in the space recently laying off decent portions of their workforce.
Yeah. The layoffs have not stopped.
Nope.
Yeah. So it's hard because I think at this point, people don't necessarily feel that it's working great. there's not a huge amount of innovation. It is a compliance activity for most companies, but I don't know if this is going to be a market for long, but it definitely seems like a hard time to come into that market.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, so the other thing, when you have a saturated market and it's mostly compliance and people hate it, yeah, there's an opportunity to disrupt it with, a better quality product, right? So, maybe that's what's happening here, is that the security awareness market has been around long enough that it's now the BlackBerry, and we're waiting for the iPhone to come in, and disrupt everything and come in with a better product. So, maybe. Yeah.
There would have to be so much improvement, though. Like, seriously, I mean, how do you make that stuff truly entertaining that people care? Because the KnowBe4, I forget what they called the video series that KnowBe4 did. It was even popular on YouTube in isolation, right? You could go to YouTube.
Yeah, they were showing it in movie theaters, right?
Yeah, and I forget the name of it. It was The Inside Man or something. Inside Man, I think, was the
I think
series.
You got it.
Yeah, and listen, man, I just didn't have time for it. Mute it, background. You know how powerful that content would have to be for me to spend an hour watching it or whatever, half an hour watching it.
Right, but if you were required to watch it, it would be preferable to.
I was required to watch
you
it.
just muted,
and I still just muted the tab and made it seem like I was watching it, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, maybe more just in time. So companies have tried to do that, where you insert JavaScript into a website, and kind of wag the finger, show somebody a better way of doing something. Like I've seen some approaches like that use like browser plugins, stuff like that try and correct bad behaviors in real time. But you got to be in line. It's tricky to do.
If I click on a gnarly link,
pops up and says, "It seems like you're about to click on an email that looks like a fish. Are you sure you want to do that?"
Or no, better yet, Sam Jackson to pop up and yell at me in my own browser.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, that would be great. Let's see. So Spider Oak is a weird company. We talked about them, I think, back in January, and I thought that was also a funding announcement. So I don't know what the heck is going on with them, but they're like entirely focused on software that goes in space. They're partnering with Space Force. It's a weird pivot. Like, it's the same products, but just kind of pivoting specifically towards basically going all in on like NASA and SpaceX RFPs, I guess.
I just want to hear the fundraising pitch. I just want to hear a recording of that fundraising pitch. Like, how does that even go? We're going to go to Mars. When we go to Mars, we need to secure the soft underbelly of our spaceships. I mean, like, that just sounds awesome. I want to hear that pitch someday.
Yeah, soft underbelly. Did you pull that right out of or is that coincidence?
No, I think I did. I think I glanced at the press release as I was talking.
Yeah, it's in the article.
That'd be a heck of a coincidence, because they say that right in the second paragraph of the.
Yeah, I didn't read the whole thing, but the quotes caught my eye.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to protect against those interstellar hackers or something.
Protect the entire space ecosystem from ground to orbit.
I mean, there's going to be. So I saw a prediction that the new, what's it called, Starship, the latest SpaceX rocket.
Starlink.
It's going to drive the cost of shipping cargo down to a level where basically, cargo ships and cargo jets won't be able to compete, and it'll replace that within 10 years. What
they're saying is it's cheaper to fly stuff through space to deliver it than to do ground or to do air.
Well, and it's suborbital, so they don't really go into space, but I think it's that combined with the time difference. You're talking about it getting there in like 3 hours versus 3 weeks. Versus via cargo ship or something like that, or a month, or half a day or longer via cargo plane.
Yeah, so, but you have to run the risk of your stuff exploding in orbit.
Well, I mean, how many thousands of cars have been lost to cargo ships getting sunk? in the last year
or
alone.
rubber duckies.
It was like 300,000 cars. Like they were one of a kind, like supercar, hypercar, like $3 million cars that are at the bottom of the Atlantic right now.
Adrian, you want to go fishing? Let's go fishing, buddy.
Let's dust off our scuba gear.
And how old are ships, right? How old is shipping stuff across oceans? And they're still losing that much cargo.
Ships been around, I guess. Yeah, I think Spider is interesting. I mean, what's the hook here? Like Tyler said, what is the pitch? Like securing Kazan LimeWir in space, like having these peer-to-peer networks that need security and end-to-end communication and satellite-to-satellite peer-to-peer storage. I don't get it.
That's what we need is secure LimeWir in space.
Absolutely, Kazaa for the win.
They need to steal music too.
Yeah, Napster. We can have this Napster by Spider.
But yeah. I mean, to my point about like space becoming like a commercial, like shipping. I learned recently that shipping is where insurance came from. Insurance was invented because shipping was so so hit or miss on whether or not your cargo would get there. That insurance
I learned that too when I wrote my insurance piece, and ironically, or coincidentally, I guess more appropriately, I just finished writing a piece on security in space. Like this was the topic that our PR person gave me for my upcoming newsletter. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be just so out there. No pun intended. Yeah. And I got into it, and it's actually pretty interesting how much space-based stuff rules our ground-based, earth-based lives. So I was kind of into it. Speaking of, Geek Day or whatever it is today, and it very much, a lot of the background reading I did was on the lower barrier to entry, i.e. cost and capabilities. I mean, that's not, I'm not saying that the next time I ship flowers to somebody for Mother's Day that I'm going to use a space-based delivery mechanism, but it was really interesting how so many of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis could be disrupted if, there's a space-based attack.
But think how impressive it would be when that space pod lands in their backyard and then opens up to show that there's a bouquet there. Happy Mother's Day, Mom, as she's
right. Out. Like nothing says I love you like a spaceship landing in your backyard.
Absolutely. But all jokes aside, I mean, I get that there are concerns. I mean, certainly latency is a big issue when it comes to communicating between ground and space, and even space to space. You're talking
Starlink is
thousands of miles, right? Really. And so how do you ensure that communication is secure? I don't know, again, what the pitch or the hook is around that. We have a lot of technology for the internet that can be reapplied, but certainly we need to do better than we have been because our current communications aren't that great anyway.
It's really upsetting when your GPS goes down and you don't know the roads because you haven't looked at an actual map in 25 years.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's move on here. Manifest Cyber was kind of interesting. So that's supply chain SBOM stuff. Approve of the name Manifest. For software developers, if you understand what the purpose of a manifest file is, in like a WAR file or something like that, or a jar. I guess surely it's used outside of just Java. I don't know, but that's a lot of my background is in Oracle and Java and Sun. So, but don't hate me. But
we don't hate you for your age. That would be ageism, Adrian.
Good name though. I mean, immediately like it fits with what they do.
Yeah, they're good people too. I've had the opportunity to meet them a couple times and work with them. Really like the folks. That's interesting right now is that SBOM space. Let's call it managing open source or supply chain security or your SBOM management. It is a overly invested spot right now, and an overly hot number of young startups all trying to tackle a very similar problem there. None of which are overly exciting. And this is not commenting on Manifest in particular, but just that space right now is so slammed with young companies that have no clear differentiation and an ability to provide a value proposition that's strong, that I'm struggling to find a winner in that space. Manifest may be one of them. They are doing some unique approaches to actually managing your SBOMs and providing actionable output from those SBOMs. But not everybody uses SBOMs. And the question is that going to be a big enough market for them to really tackle?
I mean, it feels like it should be a reporting feature of some kind of CI/CD platform, security platform or something like that, right? Or not even security platform.
Component of software composition analysis. Your old SCA vendor should be able to do this.
Yeah. It seems like it should plug into one of those existing things that already has access to the code and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. So acquisitions here, there's some interesting stuff. Siren, we talked about at the beginning of the year. It was like a 25-year-old, I think they were founded in the 90s, Israeli email security company. I think they actually started out with their own email client and stuff like that, and they kind of naturally moved into security in the early 2000s. So they were right on top of, the I love you virus and like all the email-borne threats and stuff like that, and did very well there. School. But didn't survive, and they shut down they laid off all their employees at least in late December, early January, something like that. It looks like, so good news is they were able to sell off some of their assets, which is mostly like threat intel related assets. Bad news is that those threat intel databases were only worth like $3.5 million. So yeah, rough. Pretty rough.
That's a rough exit. At least it wasn't zero, like many of them actually go to.
Yeah. Yep.
But who saw the money? Is the investors. Nobody else got any of that money. Sure. So at the end of the day, do we really care that the investors got paid back at least a fraction of what they put in? Probably not. They probably don't care either.
Right. And I think they did have some investment towards the end of the life of the company, whereas, kind of in the middle there, they were self-sustaining. But yeah, trying to keep the lights on, keep things going for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a Swedish company, Curity, that got looks like it got acquired by a PE firm, but the write-up describes it as an investment. But I think it might be a majority investment, otherwise known as an acquisition. But and then Eclectic IQ sells its agent software and engineering assets to ReliaQuest. So we've seen ReliaQuest do a couple of these. Digital Shadows was not one of those. That was a proper acquisition, but we've seen them do a couple others where it was basically an acqui-hire and acquired some software along with that acqui-hire, which is what this one looks like.
Well, this one by the wording of it, Adrian, actually appears to be asset only. So we don't want the people, we want the tech only. And so it's a little bit of a different cut. When you talk about an asset sale, it usually doesn't involve the human beings.
Yeah, I thought there was something in there that made me think there were some folks going along with it. I thought I saw the word.
It says in the opening that today they announced they had sold their endpoint detection talent and software capabilities. So it's kind of a weird definition. Did you sell the humans or not? As odd as that comes across, you get the point. But
yeah, you're right. I'm not sure it's safe to assume that talent in that context means humans.
And it could just be like one or two researchers that are strong inside of the threat hunting org or something. And hey, we'll throw in these two people as well.
or some engineers who understand the software. Yeah. And continue to develop it. Yep.
Yeah.
Or in the near future, they're AI bots and components.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually what it says, Sean. It says, partway down through, it says, founder of ReliaQuest says, we know how important it is that security teams have actionable data quickly. When combined with our recently announced generative AI capability within gray matter intelligent analysis, these new agent assets will allow ReliaQuest customers to drastically reduce their mean time, blah, 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 right? So sounds like they're going to layer it into an AI type solution, and they didn't need the people. We're going to do this in an automated way.
Where do you guys want to go next? Anything in particular, Katie, that drew your eye from the stories today?
didn't see it on here, but actually the story that was of most interest to me this morning was a CSO article on Joe Sullivan. I don't know if we need to revisit that or talk about it, but that was sort of on my mind.
Yeah,
What's
sure.
the TLDR on the article, Katie?
Well, Deborah Radcliffe, who is a longtime cybersecurity journalist, very well known, well respected, talked to Joe a little bit about what he did and did some research on what it means. And reading it really drives home the point that, first of all, you absolutely 100% need a CYA if you're a CISO, and that the judge in this case felt like, based on how this was written, that the judge in this case was saying, I'm making an exception here because I want this to be a very, very strict warning that responsibility, stops with the person who makes the action, which is a little bit concerning because, of course, nobody operates in a vacuum, right? In a company, it's almost entirely impossible to do so. And all along, Joe has maintained that he was communicating with people. I believe that is the case. Did he communicate with enough people at the organization? That I don't know. That I don't think we'll ever know. But it sounds like he was very, very much thrown under the bus for a lot of this, which could be concerning to anybody who wants to go into a CISO role. So even if you are covering your own ass, if your company is not willing to back you up, if your management, your executive team, your board is not willing to back you up, this really, really puts security people in a bad place. And the article was written very, very well by Deb, and it said that, the whole goal, and Joe's whole goal, was to keep this out in the public eye, to drive home the point that it is always a risk trade-off, right? If you take the role of an executive, whatever line of business that's in, you always take the role with a heavy responsibility. But it also focused on, there was a petition written to this judge from about 50 other CISOs saying, wait a minute, this, the worst thing that could happen is that you scare people away from the profession, because then we're not going to have anybody in the profession. So I just thought the article was interesting. There were no big ahas, but it was very well written. And I think it makes some very valid points about how we need to look at cybersecurity in the grander scheme of business. And, that proverbial seat at the table. We just really need our executive security, or our top tier security leaders, to make it more about business risk, even than we've been talking about for the past 10 or so years. It just has to be about business risk.
Yeah, it's Deb was strongly in his court throughout the process. And for those who don't know, the sentencing happened earlier this month, and he got 3 years of probation and I think some hours of community service, the typical stuff that goes along with probation. So he will be avoiding jail time. And however you feel about that, certainly I think we've learned a lot from it. And there's actually, the court transcripts, I think, are now out there. And I'm going to try and remember his name. Ryan McGeehan, I think, did a deep dive into all the lessons we can learn from the court transcripts, and paid for and went through thousands upon thousands of pages of court transcripts. And like one of those things that they found is these attackers had a list of over 100,000 working GitHub logins, and they chose Uber just because they paired that up with website popularity and sorted it by popularity, and Uber popped to the top of that list of 100,000. But the realization that they had 100,000 different directions they could have gone in. Some of those are going to be the same company. I think 13 of them were working Uber logins, so, it's not going to be 100,000 individual companies. But Tyler, that's what led me to write, what we're going to be publishing on the CyberWhy soon is the number of bad guys out there and their ability to take advantage of vulnerable targets is far outweighed by the number of vulnerable targets, I think.
Yep.
And that's something that we learned from this case.
Just an odd scenario, just literally a probability and odds scenario.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly from the Uber breach, there was a password file that was on the network that provided access, highly privileged access to a number of systems, one of which was their enterprise management system, which then provided access to a number of other things. So yeah, that's definitely a problematic, but that's not unusual. There's a lot of companies out there that have password files that are still floating around, even with a password management system in play. These are admin hygiene stuff.
That was one of Uber's 3 2022 breaches, though. This was the 2016 breach.
Okay, so we're going back a while here.
Catch up, Sean. Come on. There have been so many.
Catch up. I've got recency bias. I'm looking at the recent stuff.
We actually devoted an entire segment to just dissecting that breach that you're talking about, Sean. So ESW, like we broke down how the attack happened because I think it was VX Underground or somebody or a journalist or somebody went and asked them, "Hey, how did this work? How'd you get in?" And they sent them screenshots. They detailed step by step how it happened. And it's, I mean, it's in our advantage because we get to learn these lessons, but still, it's kind of funny that we're getting more assistance from the attacker than from some of the targets that get attacked. And that's something I'd love to see change in the industry is more transparency around how breaches happen so we can learn from these failures. All right. Thanks for bringing that up, Katie. That's a good one. I didn't realize he had given an interview, and I'll try and include that in the show notes here.
And with most things, it's the cover up that is the issue, not so much what was done at the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing that kills me about transparency is look, you've already had the breach. Like the breach is not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is bungling the breach. Transparency on taking the wrong actions. Like trying to hide it, trying to downplay it, which we still see companies do, which makes no sense to me because it just draws it out. It guarantees you're going to have more class action lawsuits. You're probably going to have more fines, and now potentially people going to jail.
Yeah, from what I see, Uber paid the cyber criminals $100,000 ransom in exchange for deleting their copy of the stolen data, and then was told that later that Uber had to pay $148 million for the 2016 data breach and cover up.
Right. It really was about, because then there was the question, if we get the data back, is it actually a breach? So that was brought up during the trial. But yes, it was the cover up. It wasn't the actual breach. That threatened to send him to jail. So that's a really, really, really important part of this whole thing that I hope nobody misses. But then you get into the area of accountability. Like, why wasn't the legal team involved? Were they actually involved? And are they denying responsibility? The former CEO denied knowing anything about it. And there's pretty much good evidence that, of course, he did. So,
yeah,
it's a conundrum.
And the worst thing, these guys had 100,000 other attack vectors, and they're just letting them go. I mean, and they did hit another company before they got caught. So after Uber tried to sweep that under the rug, they went and hit somebody else. So at least one other company got hit by these same two guys before they were caught and put in jail. And actually, them getting caught on that second hit is how this whole thing spilled out.
And not the first time. I found an article that details, or at least provides links and information about the different Uber hacks that have happened over the time, 2014, 2016, 2017,
a long
2018.
List.
Yeah, that's not good.
That could be your next full-time job, tracking Uber hacks.
There you go. Adrian, does that track well to story number 12, trends of ransomware resurgence after strange year in 2022 insurance data shows? I mean, they kind of, they do overlap in that sense, right?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, it's a good place to go to next. And yeah, we did see a big drop in ransomware payments, a 40% drop in 2022. But yeah, I guess what they're saying is maybe those. So there's two numbers here that we need to keep separate. The number of companies that get hit for ransomware, where they suffer a breach, and somebody attempts to extort money out of them, and then the other number we're talking about are the companies that actually pay. So the ransomware has never quite hit $1 billion globally. It was close in 2021, and then it dropped down to I think 500-600 million last year. And for comparison, business email compromise is something like 2.4 billion. It's in the U.S. alone, not even globally. So BEC is much larger than ransom payments in terms of direct losses, at least. But yeah,
and also not on this list. And so I'll bring up another thing that none of you are expecting. There was a 60 Minutes interview with Rachel Toback about grandparent schemes. Did anybody see that?
I did not see it, but I've heard of these schemes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a new kind of scam at all. But she was on for a short period. It was a whole segment, but it talked about how threat actors are now using AI to mimic relatives' voices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I need you to post bail for me. That kind of scenario.
Yeah. The first story was about some grandmother who was like 80, who's in air quotes. I'm doing air quotes here. Grandson calls her up, says she was in an accident. He was in an accident and needs money right away. And the police are saying that he's at fault. They're going to take him to jail right away. And she played this for her daughter, who was the kid's mother, and they were both like, wow, this sounds so eerily like the kid. And of course, we in security know to be really careful about these things. And when you start hearing things that sound a little off, like, oh my God, you've got to go to the bank right now, and a courier's coming to your house to pick it up.
Yeah,
for
urgency
a lot of us, that would set off some warning bells. But let's say you're just an average person, you don't know much about security, and somebody you love is saying, or who you think you love is saying, I'm going to go to jail. I think a lot of people out of the goodness of their heart would just jump right on it.
Yeah, and urgency is one of those key red flags that allow you to catch some of those. Well, and of course, it's the same thing that makes it hard, to catch those because, I mean, it's going to be urgency combined with something you're emotional about, right? Like a loved one. So that
and on this segment, Rachel demonstrates an actual scam against one of the show's producers. And they were just gobsmacked about it. It was pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah, and just people keeping up with what's possible now. Like it's tough. Like the average person probably doesn't know that it's possible to mimic somebody's voice that closely or videos that closely. I feel like videos is like that's a little bit better known, but there have been some examples of that out there. But yeah, 60 Minutes is definitely going to reach a crowd that we don't reach with this podcast, right? Like we probably have very little overlap with the 60 Minutes watchers. Here. If I were to guess, I could be wrong, but
I think you're wrong.
Okay. So if you want to dive more into these kinds of stats, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but the FBI's annual Internet Crime Report came out. The one for 2022 came out maybe a month or two ago, and you can get that from ic3.gov. And a lot of interesting details in there. It's good for kind of the big picture. Like, first of all, I had no idea BEC was like 5 times bigger than ransomware. That was news to me. And then like romance scams are way bigger than I thought. Like huge. They might even be bigger than ransomware. I don't remember. But
It makes sense, right? These people are preying on people's emotions, and what area is more emotional than a potentially romantic relationship?
Yeah. By victim loss, romance scams are number 5, 735 million in 2022. Million. And BC isn't even the largest one. Investment scams are the biggest ones. That's the biggest category with 3.3 billion. I wonder how much of that is crypto related.
I've been outed. I'm sorry. I won't do it
I
again.
was going to say, how much of that is crypto? Exactly.
How much of that is Tyler?
They've got it here. Crypto is 2.4 billion of that, it looks like. And specifically wallet theft alone is 1.3 billion. So that's just like tricking people out of like sharing their wallet keys or whatever.
That makes a lot of sense. Or stealing their images.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
NFTs, sorry. Lost the acronym at the moment.
I was just asked this past week to please email a copy of my license to someone, and I'm like, no. Absolutely not. Not happening. And this was a law firm, by the way. A law firm asked me to do that. I asked them, where is your secure portal? And they said, what?
Yeah, right. Like I was just filling out benefits information yesterday, and it's still a handwritten form, to select my medical benefits. Like what the heck is I'm going straight from like playing with the latest advancements in AI to like wondering why my hand hurts because it's so infrequent I write with a pen, right? I'm trying to fill out these medical insurance forms. It's just the difference between those industries is just so vast, it seems. I don't know. I guess it's more secure for it to be on paper. I don't know. I don't know why that's not a form I fill out on a website.
There are some advancements that's been done there. We use a system at Trimark that everything is online and digitally signed and validated. So there is a way to do it.
Yeah. For sure. And there are third-party companies that are identity verification.
Yeah,
of course, they cost money to use them. So, the company would have to invest in that. But I don't know if you're talking about this type of personal data, a breach of your customer's data is going to cost you a lot more than an app.
Yeah, it's interesting. And actually, a cybersecurity company, Dragos, had a blog post that they put out last week because they had an incident where a new employee had their personal email compromised prior to this employee starting and going through the onboarding process. The way that it was structured, the personal email address was used to onboard this new employee, which meant that the attacker was able to onboard to a point. Didn't have access to any data. They identified it. They stopped it. They've added in some countermeasures for the future. But it's very interesting when you start looking at the trust of as you're bringing people in and having automation and these flows. You usually often have personal email as part of that communication and even that onboarding process, unless there's additional steps to validate it. You start adding in, well, how would you normally validate it? You would have a phone call or something where you talk to the person. You pair that with what Katie brought up, where attackers can actually impersonate someone's voice. This becomes pretty interesting. And then you throw AI into the mix, and you could have a situation where companies could be breached through basically the side door where it says employees only. It gets pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and it's funny. Somebody brings up in the chat here, like if you push back on some of the stuff, somebody asks you for a social security number, you just tell them no. Like I remember back in the day, my ex-wife used to do that with doctor's offices. She'd just leave that blank and they'd be like, oh, you forgot to fill this out. She's like, no, I'm not giving you my social. And that, like, they were fine. It was all fine. They didn't actually need it. They just ask for it because it's on the form. Yep. They don't even know why they're asking for it.
Yeah, I've had that happen with my phone number, and they say, "Can we have your phone number?" And I say, "No, thank you." And they always stop and look at me and go,
Wait, that's an option?
I always gave my phone number to Radio Shack, so that way they could let me know when I needed more batteries. But you're right. Lots of times I've been at a store, I've been checking out, and they're like, "Yeah, what's your phone number?" I'm like, "I don't think you need that." And they go, "I guess I don't," and they continued with the transaction.
if I have to use it for loyalty points, this is terrible, and I'm so sorry to whomever has this number now. I use the phone number from the last line I had, landline I had like 20 years ago. I'm sorry if you're listening.
You're the one. I was wondering about all these random calls. Fun fact, you could actually use for most area codes in the United States, 867-5309, the number for Jenny from the famous song,
right,
for different loyalty things if you don't want to sign up for it. I may or may not have done that before. And what's interesting is when they ask, it'll be Jenny, Jennifer, and sometimes other random names as well.
Nice, great.
Nice.
All right. So number 13 here, we've got a new .zip TLD. And
such a horrible idea.
I don't know. I'm of the opinion that it's kind of, the hand wringing isn't particularly justified here. I don't think it's going to result in a major uptick in phishing. I
don't think it's going to result
success.
in a major uptick. I think it will increase the amount of successful phishing attacks that happen, because someone's just going to look and see all the attacker has to do now is do @ and then the name of their domain name or .zip, like phishing, or they could make it, I don't know, financial file.zip or whatever it is as the actual domain name. Put at the end of whatever the URL is to make it look like it's a legit thing. A lot of download links look like that. This is going to make it way more difficult for people to actually look at a URL to determine whether or not this is where they should be going or not. Now, the solution and fix of this should be more on the easy side, where if you have web content filtering, you can just block the .zip domain. If you have DNS type things, you could block .zip domains.
A lot of people are doing that.
Even in Exchange Online, there's transport rules to block email that can come through with .zip URLs. But people have to take that action, and people have to track these TLDs in order to have an idea that this is something that should be done. I think it's annoying. I think it's an annoyance. It's a distraction.
All the people paying for .zip domains that I've seen so far, though, are security people and IT people who think it's hilarious, and they're putting their blogs there. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's so few cases where you're gonna download a zip in that scenario anyway. I don't know, like firmware.zip.
Something to definitely look at the end of the year to see what trends are coming out of this. I think it's a horrible idea.
I think it's hilarious, and I own a couple .zip domains. Moving on. Agree to disagree on that. So the drag your GAN thing is kind of just talking about like going from filling out medical insurance forms by hand and then seeing the latest AI can do. This is the first AI, like image-based AI thing that I've seen in a while that really kind of took my breath away. And basically, it's a very visual thing. I recommend going and checking out the videos. But it's something that makes image manipulation as easy as just dragging points on an image. So like they have a picture of a lion, and you want to move the lion's head, you just grab it by the nose and you move its whole head. And it looks like a picture with a lion's head turned. And it's where it gets really crazy is they have some like microscope images and stuff like that. Like they start to hint at, okay, here's where the nasty stuff can happen, where people can kind of maybe fudge some science, fudge some evidence and things like that. Like it becomes really easy to edit an image in such a way that it the image doesn't look like it's been tampered with. So
Yeah,
and I don't know how true that is. I don't know how easy it is to detect this kind of image tampering.
What's absolutely impressive to me, and I'm looking at the Lion One playing it in the background in real time here, watching it, is it's a standing shot, still photo, not a video, but a still photo of a lion, and the lion is standing, and they drag its nose, but it's not just like a stupid cheesy like the head turns kind of minimalist approach. If you watch, the entire body reacts as if a lion's head is turned, so its whole body actually shifts to match the movement of the head in real time. That's what makes that completely impressive.
Yeah, the shoulders move, and it understands enough to know that if the shoulders move, then the rear end has to also compensate.
Has to adjust, right?
Because it understands through, I guess, like consuming enough photos of lions, that there are certain ways that the bones work and the joints work and stuff like that. So it's trying to avoid giving you like an impossible scenario with that photo.
It's completely impressive. I saw that on Twitter before I even saw it here today and was just like, oh my goodness.
And there's some really useful use cases. Like they've got a fashion use case where they just take a woman wearing a skirt and they just stretch the skirt down longer. They're like just playing with aspects of the image. And like I can see some very, very productive, useful use cases of this. But like any of these super powerful AI tools, it's all dual use. You can do some.
Yeah, they took a square-on photo of a lion too, and they drag its mouth, which is closed in the photo. They drag its mouth open, and not only does the mouth open, but it puts teeth, tongue, everything in there automatically to fill in the gap that never existed in the original photo.
Because it's consumed millions of photos of lions and it knows what the inside of a lion's mouth looks like, right?
Amazing.
I just want to go back to family photos and move eyes and heads so that everyone's looking at the camera. That's what I want to
make them. But the awkwardness is what makes it special. Come on, John.
Including the dog. The dog's never looking.
I remember the first time I saw an image like this. I remember Wendy Nather sent me a picture of me and her at RSA. Like we had a picture, I think David Spark took a picture of us at RSA. We both did a like man on the street style interview for David Spark, who does some other podcasts. He's a great guy. And she sent it to me, and my image of myself was just really upsetting. And like there was something about it that just gave me that kind of uncanny
valley.
Yeah, uncanny valley situation. And I realized that something on her iPhone or in her photo software or something like that fixed my teeth and took the gap away from my teeth. Like, and my teeth did not look natural at all. Like it was almost like I put some dentures in or something like that. And that's what was making me uncomfortable about that photo.
Yeah. The face one here, Adrian, speaking of that, the face one on that same website that we're linked to in the show notes, there's one called Face, and it's a picture of a young lady who's sitting there. She has no smile. And they give her a complete and beautiful smile. They completely just changed the photo and gave her a beautiful smile.
Can I hire these people for my wedding photos?
You sure can.
I mean, I think they share the code for this app.
Yeah, I think it's open. I think you can get it.
Amazing.
Yep, it's on GitHub. It's called Draggan, Draggan. Yeah, I just wish I had time to play with all this stuff. I just don't. Is the problem? They make a cat wink. That's funny. It's crazy. Yeah.
This really leads to the question of like what is real, and what is art versus what you capture. I mean, one of the biggest, and I've been in photography for a long time, and one of the challenges has been capturing the moment as you see it. What you see through the lens. I often can visualize something, but capturing that and having that in the photo can be challenging and difficult. And there's always this question with Photoshop: does it enhance? Does it change it? Does it change reality? Now we're really looking at bending reality, especially when you talk about nature photography, which is one of the toughest things to do. You have this massive lens, 400, 800 millimeter lens. You're sitting there stalking a lion to get a picture of it. One of the most amazing pictures of a lion I've ever seen was a lion as it's running towards the photographer and ends up mauling the photographer, but the photographer gets the shot, and it's just absolutely incredible.
Because that was worth it.
But now we're looking at a situation where
he was going to get mauled regardless, right? So
you can just get a picture of a lion sitting at the zoo and actually make it look like it's fierce or ferocious or winking or doing something wacky. I mean, the memes write themselves. It really does beg the question, like, what is reality? Because it could be reality. It's this thing that you could manipulate, or if you wait long enough, you could get that shot. But it's very interesting if there's going to be some in the photography world is going to have to be something where there's category for AI modified versus not.
Yep. So
because it is very different than Photoshop.
Speaking of that, Daniel Miessler actually has it. So he made a standard for that, and he's got 6 different categories between like you can't use Lightroom or Photoshop without using AI in some form. Like AI is just baked into a lot of those tools. And so he's got different categories for depending on how much AI helped versus things that are partially or entirely AI generated with almost no human intervention. I forget what he calls it. We don't have it linked here today. It's AI influence level. He calls it AIL, or AI influence level. And he's got 6 different levels from 0, no AI involved, 100% human created, to 5, which is AI created with very little human involvement.
I think it's necessary. I mean, I think the most I've really done in Lightroom is lighten up the scene a little bit or tweak some of the settings. But yeah, you can get creative with that. I'm definitely not the Photoshop expert like my wife is.
Yeah, so I've reduced some under eye baggage, but this sort of leads into the whole idea of social media regulation, and there's been a lot of talk about this lately because of generative AI and because of these apps that can make a lion jump for joy or whatever the heck you're going to do. That there are big groups that want to regulate, like, warnings or just disclaimers on anything that's been tampered with via AI, so that it doesn't cause some of the societal and mental health issues that it can. I mean, it's one thing if you're making a lion turn its head. It's not right or wrong, whatever your personal opinion is, but when it actually creates this alternate reality that people can't achieve, especially young kids who don't necessarily know the difference. It's something to think about, having these
and what happens if we can't detect, like if it gets to it seems inevitable it's going to get to a point where you can't tell if an article was written by a human or an AI. In some use cases, maybe that doesn't matter, but in others, like art competitions and stuff like that, it's incredibly important.
Yeah, the CEO of OpenAI was in Congress, I believe it was last week, or maybe that was the week before, but basically was talking about to Congress, there needs to be an agency of AI that has some oversight and provides some guidance around AI. And he's concerned. So the person who actually is running OpenAI has concerns around this because there's lots of LLMs around there. The Pandora's box has been open at this point. And if we don't have some sort of guidance or guiding factors around AI use and what the capabilities are, what they should be. I mean, it's kind of like Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park going, you were so focused on whether or not you could, you never even thought about whether or not you should. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote.
No,
and
that's
like,
close.
all you did was you stood on the shoulders of giants and then you added to this and you built on this next thing. We're on, and then there's even a comment about discovery. It's like, how can you be on the edge of discovery and not take the next step? And Ian Malcolm's like, well, discovery is a horrible thing. It causes lots of pain for a lot of people. And you talk about this thing as it's wonderful.
Act, he describes it,
but
as
there's
a violent
impact.
Act.
Yeah. So there's my pop reference movie quote of the day is from Jurassic Park for those who are tracking.
And so if you talk to people who actually collect art, like the first big impact I think from this was the image generation, right? The generative AI, DALL-E, Midjourney, spitting out images, and artists. My mom is a fairly famous artist, and she does traditional oil on canvas and charcoal on plywood. We call them her plywood people. You'd have to see it, but yeah, and she's very upset about this also. But I noticed like one of the things missing there is, if you're going to buy an $8,000 piece of art or an $80,000 piece of art or $8 million piece of art, like the art is maybe like 10% of what makes it interesting. The other 90% is knowing who the artist is and the story that came out of like why they produced this piece of art, where they made it. The one time it was like the only reason we know what the Mona Lisa is because it was stolen back in the early 20th century. That's what made it famous. And none of that storytelling is going to exist around a piece of AI art that just gets generated and spat out.
But then that raises the question, generations who are raised on this, are they going to care?
Are they going to value that, or did they just
we know because generations before us cared and shared these stories.
I think they both coexist. Like AI generated stuff isn't going away. So
I think I can push back a little bit on you, Adrian. Just because a computer spits out the artwork does not necessarily mean there's not a story behind the prompting decisions that made up that piece of artwork. Like, think about the fundamental decisions to request, hey, and I believe I've found your mother's work online. It looks amazing, like really, really cool stuff. How does she make the decision to make that, right? Like in the moment, how does she make the decision to choose that picture, that fundamental cut, that fundamental piece of whatever it is that she's pulling together? And I think the prompting process of creating and tweaking and moving things around, that's its own story. Yeah. And I think, listen, art people can make a story out of anything, right? And I think there's going to be a story behind the decisions that make up the
that's
prompts.
Part of how you sell it. That's part of the selling process is you have to be able to tell a story about it.
Yep.
And you tell that story to the people at the gallery, and the gallery tells that story to the people who come and look at it, and that's how you get it sold. But yeah, you're right, Tyler. You can, I mean, the prompt has to come from somewhere. Like the idea comes from the same place. The process, the bit in the middle is very different. And some of the story does come from that process, and I think you do miss a little bit of that.
I think the process is just different. Like fundamentally, the process is still going to be a process.
Maybe there is an opportunity for an NFT to be famous because it was stolen by some kind of famous digital art heist or thief.
That's our second mention of NFT today, which is probably more than there's been in the past several months. Thank goodness.
The next installment in the Ocean's 11 series is going to be very weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Ocean's 14 or 15.
All right, let's hit this squirrel story and then let's wrap this up. So today's squirrel story is Montana banning TikTok. Does anybody have some heat behind this one that they want to bring in?
Yeah, it's funny when this news article broke, I was writing about it for the CyberWire, and for those of you that read the CyberWire, I tend to put like snarky comments, funny pictures, stuff like that. I actually, just to tie to the last story, I tried to do my own personal digital artwork of the Montana governor dancing a TikTok dance, which is what I was attempting to do. And it turns out I'm not smart enough to do that. So if any listeners out there can take, I forget the gentleman's name, whatever that governor's name is, read the article, take a photo of him and make him doing a TikTok dance and send it to me. I want to use it because I think it would be funny as hell.
Yeah. I think that's inevitable. Somebody's going to do that if they haven't already.
But for those that didn't read the story, Montana has decided to officially ban TikTok in the state of Montana, which, besides fundamentally being completely stupid, is almost impossible to enforce, just like anything else when you're talking about network-based bans. Now, Adrian,
wait, there is no Great Wall of Montana?
To enforce. it's easy to enforce against the stupid people who don't want to take the time to bypass it, which is probably the bulk of people that would be, looking at TikTok, I guess, with any regularity. Did I just slam public TikTok use? I think it did. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a stupid attempt at stopping TikTok in the state of Montana.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, people are just going to find the same videos on YouTube anyway that are cross-posted into other. It doesn't make sense.
And the law explicitly has no punishment for anybody consuming TikTok. It's all aimed at any attempt by the people running TikTok to get people in Montana to be able to see it. There's a $10,000 a day fine.
Well, is that a $10K a day fine to Montana or to TikTok? Meaning, if you don't self-ban packets to Montana, or is it finding creators of content from creating within Montana? I've heard it's the latter, but I don't know for sure. I haven't done a deep dive on the law.
No, I mean, the law is very short, but yeah, it explicitly excludes anyone that uses TikTok, any TikTok users.
So it's ridiculous to begin with, but Adrian, I think you should go through we should at least talk about a couple of the sub bullets here, including cooking chicken in NyQuil, pouring hot wax on a user's face. Like, what is all this? So
the law gives some examples of why it's being banned. They felt the need to say, here's why we're banning it, because TikTok fails to remove and may even promote dangerous content that directs minors to engage in dangerous activities, including but not limited to. And then if you go look at our show notes, we've got the whole list of bullet points here. One I mentioned in the intro was cooking chicken in NyQuil, pouring hot wax on a user's face, smearing human feces on toddlers, licking doorknobs and toilet seats to place oneself at risk of contracting coronavirus.
Have they never heard of the challenges that were around for years now that were on YouTube?
That's the thing. All of this is a shrouded attempt to just ban what people see as a Chinese-based app. This is not about the damn doorknob licking. I mean, if you're dumb enough to do it, you're going to find
Instagram, right?
Yes, it is.
All this content is cross-posted on every other app out, every other social network, isn't it?
But we need to protect the children, Adrian.
Think about the children.
Yes.
Well, you need to protect the children and you need to protect the cars. Did you guys hear about the TikTok car theft challenge that is costing Hyundai over $200 million?
The Hyundai USB key. Yeah, because Hyundai cheaped out and didn't put immobilizers in their steering column. Yeah. Right.
And so that got out on TikTok, and every stupid teen who's on TikTok is now stealing Hyundai vehicles, causing over $200 million to customers, damages to customers and stolen vehicles already, based on TikTok.
Let that be a lesson to Hyundai. What?
It's only 1/10 of that in Montana. Think of the money saved.
And it'll be even less in the upcoming months, right?
That's right. Think of the money saved by banning TikTok in Montana. They have dirty doorknobs and less stolen Hyundais.
My 2001 Volkswagen Passat had an immobilizer in it. Like, I don't know why Hyundai's built 2020 plus decided to leave that out. Was it the chip shortage?
I don't know. But I put a key in my mid-90s Volkswagen Passat, turned the key to unlock it, and pulled the entire core out of my car. So listen, keys don't always secure vehicles.
Please tell me that afterwards you went, Kalima.
It's exactly what I did. I wish I had it on video.
Great.
There's a new one coming out. There's a new Indiana Jones movie coming out.
Oh yes, yet another one. I did hear the rumor that Harrison Ford might die in this one because apparently that he's actually trying to kill off all of his characters.
Oh, okay.
So that he doesn't have to do anymore.
Yeah, I didn't know if you meant during filming or not.
Well, that may also happen, but I think the plan here is he's trying to kill off all of his characters so that he doesn't have to go film any more sequels, i.e. Star
smart.
Wars, and now, although in Star Wars you can still come back if you're dead, apparently. So
Yeah.
It's true.
No.
Paul Walker apparently makes a cameo in the Fast X or Fast 10 movie that's out this month. So,
Oh no.
Oh no, that's not a good idea. Yeah, I mean, if in the Star Wars universe, if you die, that just changes your opacity on when you're on screen. you then
get
become
one tenth the
slightly
screen time,
see-through,
and people can see through you.
Right.
Yeah, you become a ghost. All right, good stuff. I think we'll wrap there. Coming up next, we've got 5 micro interviews from RSA. Enjoy those. Check those out. Thanks so much to all my wonderful co-hosts here, to Katie, Sean, and Tyler for joining me today. It was a good time, a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing everybody 2 weeks from now. Next week is a holiday week, so we are bringing out an episode from the vault. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is, but the ones I chose are really good. There's some really good ones. See y'all next time.